Welcome back, folks, as we go inside the locker room tonight with Coach Greg Dahl, Sparta girls head basketball coach and one of the key girls basketball figures in this area for a long time. Coach, welcome to Seven River Sports.
Well, thanks for having me on.
What we usually do to introduce our guests to our viewers is have them relate a little bit of their coaching, playing, whatever experience has contributed to where you're at now.
Larry, that might take a while with this guest.
That's right.
Then we'll have him back and ask questions.
All right.
We're looking for people for January.
I'm a North Crawford High School graduate. I played, or I sat on their bench in the 60s, late 60s, when Bruce Kieser coached down there, and they had a heck of a tradition.
Yeah,
I remember that when they scored you like 6-4.
They would run their offense till you died.
That's right.
But they would defend.
Yeah.
So, but I mostly sat and watched. I wasn't a very disciplined high school basketball player, and that really isn't the way I see the game now. But then I went on kind of a long and windy road, and in my late 20s, I went back to college and finished up an education degree at Platteville, and got hired in Toma in the early 80s. Just thrilled to death to get a job teaching kids, and they asked if I'd coach the 8th grade boys. And I got up there, and before I ever got a chance to coach the 8th grade boys, the head girls basketball coach became a friend of mine. He's a counselor at Logan High School now, Jim Rowe.
Oh, yeah.
And
know him well.
He asked me to take his JV girls. Unseen, I took them. Let me tell you, it was a long year. There wasn't much basketball going on up there. There was no middle school program, not even a 9th grade program. 2 years later, when he left, nobody wanted the job. I mean, really, I think I was the only applicant for the head girls job at Toma. I took the job, and I fell in love with coaching girls basketball. Was there for quite a while. Eventually wore my welcome out there. Got out, thought I was done, sat for 7 years, and one day my wife told me I should go do something, get out of the house. Thought it would be good, and there were the opportunity at Sparta presented itself. I went over and talked to the folks, and they hired me, and I've been there for 7 years.
Well, we're pretty lucky, Larry, because this our guest today is destined to the Hall of Fame.
No doubt.
Wisconsin basketball coaches certainly will. He'll be there one of these years, and I'll be there to watch him being inducted. But you know what's amazing to me, Coach Dahl, is your energy level that you bring. I know you from a couple different perspectives. One as a referee, two as a commissioner, and three as a fan with our daughters playing at Lacrosse Logan. But your energy level through the years has been very unique. You seem to continue to have that burning desire, which I think a lot of people throughout the years, it fades away. Talk about how you're able to maintain that.
Well, the energy during a game is just the only way I know how to do it. I'm sure my style, for some people, can be misinterpreted. I really had no background to know how to coach. I just began to talk from the sidelines to my kids when I first started doing it, and that's become my sort of modus operandi. I'm loud, and I communicate with my kids the entire game. The energy outside of the season, it's just how I believe it needs to be done. For example, this summer we took 16 Sparta kids to Colorado for 10 days, took them to a basketball camp at Colorado State, took them into the mountains twice hiking and horseback riding, and I have a wonderful wife who's incredibly supportive, which allows us to do that. But I think, you know, the bottom line to this thing is relationships, and because really you're just throwing a ball through a hole, you know. So I try to get to know these kids in every way I can, and it's only fun for me if I wade in up to my eyebrows and just keep going.
But that's not normal. I mean, for example, taking your girls to Colorado, you're
We often tell our guests that they're not normal.
Colorado to you and me is both kind of a Shangri-La. I mean, I love Colorado like you do, and to take your girls and expose them to those kinds of things, typically high school coaches do not do that. So it's reflective of your passion for the game.
It is. You know, I first became aware of you when my kids were in school at Logan. I think it was, they graduated about the early 90s, as I recall. And that was when you had great teams at Toma. I I remember a couple of the girls, they were a couple of small guards. I think one's name was Amy Olson, and I forget the other one's name.
Rhonda Rice.
Rhonda Rice.
Amy Strohmeyer at the time.
Yeah, Strohmeyer, yeah. There were great battles between Logan and Toma in those days. I mean, those were kind of the epitome of MVC basketball in those days. And now your game at Sparta looks different from what I remember your game at Toma. You changed your game style somewhere along the way.
I did. I have a long memory. I got tired of facing Logan's pressure and Logan's fast break, and when I came back in, I said, that's how we're going to play. We're going to turn this thing around. We're going to run at people, and we're going to come after people. And in Toma, we were more of a walk it down the floor. I did have incredibly good guards at the time.
You did, yeah.
But even when those kids graduated, we were walk it down the floor, run our stuff, get back on defense, play half-court man-to-man, and mix some zone in. There's a lot of reasons it happened the way it happened at Sparta, but a lot of it was just absolute respect for what Coach Bruce had done at Logan and the difficulty that we had in playing against that system ourselves. And it's fun to play. When I got to Sparta, it was a good fit right away. And the best thing it does, I think, is it keeps kids out. We don't usually have a disgruntled bench because our bench is playing at every level in our program. Our bench is playing, and I think that's a real positive of that system. And you have to play your bench, or you can't play that hard.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny you said that, because about playing time. I think that's one of the issues that coaches face more than anything else, in terms of administrative pressures and parental pressures and even player pressures, and in terms of playing people a lot. And one of the unique things about you, Coach Dahl, is that you have all of your kids buy into the system and they all play, which I think a lot of people at any level can take a page out of that. But talk a little bit about something that's talked about throughout the world, and that's the pressures in coaching. The pressures that you put on yourself, the pressures in winning, the pressures from parents, the community, and so on. How has that affected you?
Well, pressure on myself used to make me sick, basically. I mean, I would be so stressed out the first go-around when I was at Toma. I took the game very seriously, and my personal success in the game, too seriously. And it would stress me out, cause me a lot of grief, personal grief. And sometimes it would interfere with relationships with kids. Second time around, I think I have my priorities in the right place. And there's still all kinds of pressure. There's pressure on kids from every direction. Pressure, you know, to participate in things they shouldn't participate in. Pressure from their parents, maybe, to score more points than they're going to score, or to be a better player than they are. Pressure from parents on coaches has been a relentless thing for 30 years. But I have to give the people in Sparta, I have to give them their dues. In 7 years there, I think we've had one meeting with a parent.
That's very
One
unusual.
meeting with a parent. And when they hired me, that was kind of our deal, that I wasn't going to stay around if it was going to be one of those things where I had to come in every 4 or 5 weeks and sit down with parents and explain philosophy. Because I figured that's what they hired me for. I would decide who played and how much they played and what style we would play. And if they didn't want me to do that, then they needed to get another guy. But that's been real good, and I give the people in Sparta all kinds of credit for that.